Hello everyone, and welcome back to Grimhush. Tonight, we're diving into a spine-chilling tale guaranteed to haunt your dreams. So turn off the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to explore the eerie world of scary stories. Before we begin, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments below. If you're enjoying our content, please hit the subscribe button and give us a like. Your support enables us to bring you more spine-tingling stories. I know many of you use these videos to help you fall asleep, so I'll do my best to keep you company through the night. Now let's dive into today's terrifying story. Every night at 2 a.m., something comes to visit me. I recently moved back home to Appalachia, Kentucky specifically. Well, I've actually never been to Key in particular. I'm a Virginia boy. But after years of scrimping and saving and denying myself all the little pleasures that make life worth living, I managed to buy a little piece of land outside of town and a trailer in pretty good condition too. I even had enough cash left over to afford all of those annoying connection fees for electricity and water and whatnot. Now, some folks might look down on a trailer, but I don't need a lot of space. And with all my basic utilities hooked up, it's really no worse than an apartment. Although property tax is a lot cheaper than rent. But I digress. I didn't just move out here because I missed the mountains and the woods. See, I used to live in the city, Las Vegas. My apartment was a shithole, and pouring drinks for all the poor saps who drained their wallets at the casinos was my job. I swear, there ain't many lines of work more depressing than that of a Las Vegas bartender. Kept me from ever risking a dime at the tables, myself. But something unusual happened one night. This old man came in. Black man. I gotta assume in his 70s, nice clean suit and hat. But his hands and his face were absolutely filthy. The guy looked like he'd been digging ditches all day. He sat down with a sigh, and I started to pour him a beer. Well, he looked up real sharp and asked for a shot of whiskey. I obliged, of course. But seeing as I'd already poured the beer, and figuring he must have had a hell of a day, I slid it over to him anyway. "This one's on me," I said. "You look pretty beat." Well, he smiled, a real big grin, and his teeth, unlike his face, were damn near perfect. Pearly white, practically shining in the dimly lit barroom. He thanked me and drank it down all at once, before reaching for his shot of Jack and downing that too. He turned to me and ordered 2 more. Again, I obliged, and as I did, his grin suddenly went away. He asked me what was wrong with me. I was about to apologize. Sure, I must have spilled or something. But as I looked over at him, he showed no sign of irritation or anger. I knew, and I'm not quite sure how I did, that his question was a little more general than that. He was asking me what was wrong with me, what was wrong with my life. And his countenance was that of a businessman, even under all the filth and grime. The alarms in my head started to go off. I got really nervous, all at once. And I said the first thing that came to mind.
"I guess I'm pretty lonely."
It was the truth, of course. I'd made no real friends since moving to that godforsaken city. I'd been too busy trying to survive at first, and presently trying to get out. No girl, no buddies, just me in my dingy apartment, working in this dingy bar, dreaming of being anywhere but here. His smile came back. It looked as if a load had been lifted from his shoulders, and he downed both shots of whiskey in quick succession. He paid for his drinks, stood up quickly, and tipped his hat. Wordlessly, he strode out the door, leaving me not a little bit unnerved. Now, before I go any further, I gotta say, there was one more peculiarity to this old fella. We spoke, and I remember the gist of what he said. I remember what he ordered, and I remember him thanking me, but no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to remember his actual words. Strange as that is, it pales compared to what happened next. That night, as I fell asleep, I dreamed of a girl with golden hair, beautiful blue eyes, and a brilliant smile. Not a dirty dream or anything like that. We sat and talked and laughed. Her voice was like birdsong, and she smelled of peaches. When I woke up, I felt refreshed and happy. Well, that feeling stayed with me, right up until about the time I went to work. I was standing at the counter, cleaning one of the glasses, when I realized that the whole place was empty. I checked the clock, 8:32 p.m., not exactly late, but we'd usually have at least a few customers by now. I was ready to write it off as a slow night when a voice called out to me, asking for a shot of whiskey. I turned, and the man from the previous night was sitting in the same seat he'd been last night. He smiled real big, and he was still covered in dirt and grime. I poured his shot, and I wondered to myself how he hadn't been bounced at the door. I slid it over, and he drank it down. Now I still can't remember his words, but I know he asked me if our business was settled. If I was satisfied, my heart went a little cold, and before I could stop myself, I nodded real vigorously. He laughed. And what a laugh it was. It didn't really seem to come from his mouth, or anywhere for that matter. He said something about how a young man like me shouldn't be lonely, and he left. He paid first, of course. Exact change. Well, I went home fairly shaken at the end of the night. Not a single soul walked through those doors all night long. I keep a bottle of scotch in the kitchen for special occasions and sleepless nights, and I poured myself a couple of shots. I'd calmed my nerves a little and started making excuses in my head. I went into the shower next and turned it up really hot, closed my eyes as I washed my hair, and when I did, I felt a pair of soft hands glide down my chest. I heard a gentle voice in my ear and felt a pair of soft hands glide down my chest. I got spooked, slipped backward, and it felt like I slipped into somebody else, I swear. But when I opened my eyes, I was alone. Of course, I was.
But it smelled like peaches, and I started to feel really sick.
I rinsed myself off quickly and got out, and as I did, I felt terribly tired. Took all my energy to dry off and crawl into bed. Well, I started to dream real quick, and the girl was there again. But this time, she was sitting at my table, glaring at me, rubbing the back of her head. I started to speak, but I shut up real quick. See, I felt the cool, sharp, and very impartial blade of a rather fucking large knife pressed against my throat, and the hand that held it was absolutely filthy. The man's voice, I heard it again, and for the first time, I could remember his words. You better be real careful, boy. Strike one. I looked at the girl with the golden hair, scowling at me, and I woke up. When I crawled out of bed, I was shaking. My nausea had gone into overdrive, and I ran into the bathroom, entirely emptying my stomach into the toilet. My neighbor must have heard me because he banged on the wall and told me to keep it down. I wiped my mouth off with toilet paper and went to check in the mirror to make sure I was fully cleaned off. I damn near shouted when I did, along my throat, where I know damn well there didn't used to be any mark of no kind. There was a long, old, faded scar, like somebody had slit my throat, and I'd lived to tell the tale. I didn't get any sleep that night. I called into work and told them I was quitting. My boss was fucking furious, but I hung up on him. Packed my things, loaded them into my old truck, and hit the road. Spent a bit of money on sleeping pills. The kind that make it so you don't dream, you know. And I went home to my mama. She wasn't happy about it, but I told her I just needed a couple weeks, that I was buying my own land, and I already told you how that ended. I'm out of sleeping pills. Tonight, I'm gonna let myself dream again. I can't just drug myself every night, right? And hell, I never saw that old man till I came to Las Vegas, so maybe now that I'm out, everything might just go back to normal. I'm not sure. I'm too nervous to fall asleep. So here I am telling my wild tale to you folks. I love the dark. It erases everything and replaces it with nothing. In true darkness, you could hold your hand inches from your face and not see a thing. In a dark, messy room, the mess didn't exist. All that did was you, the pillow your head sat on, and the blanket keeping you warm. It was a void of peace and quiet that I never got enough of. until it wasn't. Until there was something it didn't erase, choosing to make itself known. Despite replacing the bulbs a dozen times, the basement of our house never got light. It wasn't stingy old or creepy like in movies. The stairs didn't creak with each step, and you weren't met with dread-filled storage rooms unless you looked for them. No, you were met with a fluffy black couch and a few old chairs, with a coffee table in between. An entertainment center held candles at each corner, along with my sketchbooks and a few pencils, sprawled messily across the hardwood surface. Admittedly, the boarded-up window on the other side of the room wasn't welcoming, but I wasn't supposed to go down here anyway. The entrance to the basement was a white door in the middle of our kitchen. It was made to blend in with the rest of the wall, and as such was featureless beyond a small keyhole, marked by nothing, where a knob would be. My parents had the key. Yes, I stole it. They turned their whole room upside down while I laughed quietly in my room, stashing it in a drawer under my bed that was previously for clothes. The keyhole clicked when it unlocked, loud enough to hear from the living room, so I saved my time in the basement for movie nights on my phone while they were sleeping, or on weekdays when my parents were out. Sometimes I'd hear something skitter across the hard floor in far-off rooms, but it never bothered me. Rats were bound to live in the places we didn't. They didn't invade my space. I didn't invade theirs. My focus was on whatever abstract creature my mind was putting to the paper of a notebook anyway. We were fine. I thought we were fine. It was at night when I realized that it wasn't a rat. It had been about a month since I got their key, and for some reason, they wouldn't stop looking for it. It wasn't like they went down there themselves, so I didn't understand their panic. On that night, my mother was on vacation with some of her friends for the rest of that week, and I thought my dad left for work about an hour before. I had spent this hour laying in my bed, straining my ears for the smallest of sounds just to make sure, and by this time, I felt confident. I opened my drawer, taking the cold metal key in my hands. The ridges at its end never stopped captivating me, and I'd run my finger over it time and time again. But if I was going to do this, it was now. The sooner I got in, the better. I slipped the key into my pocket and opened my door, striding through a long hall with as light of steps as I could manage. I got down the stairs and turned the corner into the bright kitchen. Most lights in our house were yellowish, except the kitchen, which had to be the brightest shade of white my dad could manage. I was by the basement door when I heard him, because, of course, he wasn't actually at work. Footsteps went hurriedly about his bedroom, just one room down from where I was. They started coming closer. I pulled my hand from my pocket and walked to the cupboard, grabbing the nearest glass cup I could find and walking to the sink. My dad peeked his head at me from the living room. "Hey, Brian, what's going on?" "Oh, nothing. I was just thirsty," I said as I filled the glass with water. "What about you? I thought you had work." "Just about to go in, actually. There were some things I needed to do from home real quick." "Ah," I said. I took a giant drink of my water, leaning against the counter closest to me. Half of me was waiting with impatience for him to leave, while the other was genuinely interested. "Got anything in your pocket?" my dad asked. I realized my hand was covering my pocket and immediately let it fall to my side. I felt myself shrink at the question. Oh, why do you ask?" I asked, trying to sound calm. I pulled out my phone so he could see. "I've got this." My dad looks me in the eyes for maybe half a second. His expression was something I couldn't place at the time. I thought he might have known something, but before I could ponder it too long, he shifted his gaze to my phone. "Yeah, that makes sense. You carry that thing everywhere." "Jaden loves to steal my phone. We know that much," I said. "Fair enough. All right. You get some good sleep tonight, and you enjoy it because I can't." I laughed.
"I will, I promise. See you tomorrow?"
"Yup, see you." His heavy shoes pounded the floor as he walked to the front door and left. I wasn't sure if I got away with it or not. Surely he couldn't have known, I thought. There wasn't realistically a way he could have known about it, especially without prying me for it if he actually thought it was there. The thing was way too precious to them, Yet my brain found small reasons to doubt my reasoning like it always did. Now I knew he was gone, though. He likely would be working until 5 or 6 in the morning, which gave me ample time to enjoy myself. I walked to the keyhole and inserted the key. It turned with a lurch and a loud click, and with that, the door floated open above the long set of stairs trailing into the dark. I stepped down to the carpet of the stairs and closed the door behind me, the same click locking it back in place. How did I get down without falling? A mixture of feeling my way and having a mental map. There were exactly 10 steps, the last one bringing me to the floor level. To the immediate right of this last step, there were 2 flashlights on the floor. I picked them up before I walked 3 steps over, and then a large step right, falling into the fluff of my couch. It was like a trust fall. The flashlights were with me so that, if I so chose, I could see something. For now, I didn't want to. I propped my feet up on the couch and laid my head on a small pillow, letting the dark engulf my presence. Total black was soothing to me. I knew what was in front of me, but I didn't have to see it. I didn't have to be there, which was nice because at that moment I wanted to be as far from there as I could be. Life itself might as well have been rejecting me. No matter what I did, the only thing that felt right was nothing at all. I had no friends to stay for besides my brother, who admittedly was awesome, but even he annoyed me sometimes. Maybe I annoyed him more so. The thought of that made me want to sink into the ocean, as I felt like I was finally losing my senses. Something jerked them right back. It was the scuttling sound. Claws met the hard floor as something ran about in the storage room. You can't miss it, except at this moment I noticed how loud it was. It felt like it was coming from something bigger than a rat. What else could it have been, though? Since it already interrupted my peace, I might as well have gone looking. Where rats were, their droppings likely were too. I knew where to look. There wasn't any reason not to confirm it, so I sat myself up and took a flashlight in my hands. Standing up, I flicked it on. A large yellow, hazy circle appeared on the opposite wall, almost directly on top of the wooden board that covered the window. I walked without much hesitation to 2 small entryways. One led to an old washer and dryer which never worked, while the other led into a winding storage room. Once you'd seen one part of the washing room, you'd seen all of it, so I moved on quickly. It was the storage room that got complicated. I set foot into it, immediately noticing a thick wall of chills. Piles and piles of anything between boxes, and furniture made tight pathways for me to walk through. There looked to be enough in here that we wouldn't need to buy furniture for decades to come, yet my parents left it entirely ignored. As I marched through the paths, little chains would find themselves hanging in my face. Pulling them supposedly turned on the bulbs attached, but like everything down here, they didn't work. Now they were only annoying. I hadn't heard whatever was there since I got up. Rats were skittish after all, and they were probably scared to death, so it made sense. But I also noticed that the floor, contrary to what I thought, was relatively clean for a place that hadn't seen the light of day since I was born. And then I did hear it. Something ran past my side. It sounded close enough to be right by my feet, and a part of me recoiled. I spun around, whipping my light around with me, only for it to flicker and die in front of. I didn't know what it was at first. There were 2 dots close to the ground, both greenish with a hint of hazy yellow. It reminded me of the way a cat's eyes would glow. As that thought crossed my head, it clicked. They were eyes, watching me, entirely unmoving. I instinctually froze with it, locking my gaze with its own. Whatever form was behind the eyes blended in seamlessly with the dark that both of us took refuge in. It was a weird feeling, learning that an animal you didn't invite was living with you. Rats or squirrels were one thing, but anything else felt surreal. I lifted my foot and inched it forward. The pair of eyes moved back, and after a few seconds, they darted away. I clicked my flashlight again and again, but it refused me. I turned about in my spot, trying to feel my way around, but there were no real walls. only the uneven, sloppy stacks of chairs, benches, and boxes. Eventually, I made my way. I only knew by the transition to a flat carpet that I was at the door, and from there it was easy to feel my way to the steps and climb back out. I opened the basement door and crossed the threshold into the blinding kitchen light. As I looked back down, what is usually a wall of black was broken by the same glowing eyes staring back. The light above me blinked ever so slightly under its gaze until it decided to vanish. As soon as it did, I shut the door and locked it tight. "Brian," I heard behind me. Looking back, I saw Jaden. His eyes were wide open, his attention locked on the key in my hand. "Jaden, I need you to keep quiet about this," I said. We were in Jaden's room, a mess of toys and trinkets. It had been about 2 years since the last time he touched any of them, and I was surprised our parents hadn't made him clean it years ago.
I guess that's what it's like to be the favorite child.
"They've been looking for that key like crazy, and you've had it the whole time?" Jaden asked. "Oh, stop acting surprised. You've stolen enough of my stuff to know how I did it."
Yeah, I steal your phone and then give it back the next day. You stole the basement key?
"Big difference," I said sarcastically.
What's even down there?
"It's like a second living room. The entertainment center we used to have is down there with a few couches and chairs, even a coffee table." "Of course you'd keep that to yourself," Jaden said. "If it makes you feel any better, none of the lights work. You'd piss yourself in the dark." Jaden slapped me lightly on the arm, stifling a laugh. "Hey, I'm not 5. Can you get me down there?" I looked him over. "Okay, I can, but you have to follow some rules." He watched me intently. "First, I hold the key at all times. It goes in the drawer under my bed. Second, we only go down when our parents have been asleep for an hour, or when they're at work. And I will always be there with you, and you're going to deal with that." "Damn, all right," he said. "You looked scared when you came out." I forgot about that for the few minutes we'd been talking. On my phone, I'd looked up what a cat's eyes looked like. When their eyes were glowing against the light, it looked damn identical to what I'd seen. Something was off, that was for sure, but I couldn't put it together yet. "There's a cat down there," I eventually said. A cat. "Yeah, it could have sneaked in through the boarded-up window. I don't know. I only saw its eyes." "And you found out?" "Like 20 minutes ago." "Well," Jaden said, "I don't think it can survive there for long, can it?" Jaden loved cats, so of course this was the first thing he thought of. Yet he did have a point. A cat trapped in our basement where nobody went at all. What food could it find? "You're right. I mean, however it got in, it could get out again if it had to, right?" That question was more to me than to him. The truth is, I didn't see a way to get in at all. The plywood on the window was too tight, and there wasn't a hole. The basement door was its only way out, and it wasn't open nearly ever. "I don't know. Do you think we should get it out tonight?" "Tonight's our best shot. Dad's gonna be out of the house for hours." "Wait," Jaden said. His face lit up in excitement. "Something I've grown to half dread. Remember that fishing net Dad got me?" He went to his closet and pushed its doors open, searching for something. I very well remembered it. Jaden got the thing during his fishing phase on his birthday. I knew he'd never use it, and lo and behold, I was right. He instead stuffed it into his closet. Jaden valiantly raised his hand up to show it. A giant, loose net connected to a metal pole. My dad said that in ponds it could catch a lot of fish. Anywhere else, it wouldn't be so useful.
You're really gonna try to catch a cat with a fishing net?
I apologize. Ye ole, smartass. Do you have any better ideas? I laughed. No, I don't. It'll be traumatizing as hell for the poor thing, but it's better than having it starve. At that moment, our minds were made up. A part of me felt like I was losing an opportunity. The cat could have been a pet of my own. I could sneak in and feed it every night, maybe gain its trust. I could sit down there every night and let it cuddle up when it wanted. Nobody had to know, but what would happen when I moved out? It'd wonder where I went, waiting for its food, which would never come.
The thought of that depressed me even more. For its own good, it needed to be freed.
I led Jaden to the basement door and slid the key in. It clicked and the door opened again. I could practically feel Jaden shudder at the steps. "You think you're gonna be okay? I'll hold your hand." He stayed silent for a good few seconds before grabbing mine. "I'm not chickening out, but that's freaky as hell." "If only you like the dark like me," I said. "You're missing out." We walked into the depths of the cat's lair. I told Jaden how many steps there were, and that seemed to ease his anxiety. From there, I had him follow me to the couch where I finally picked up my spare flashlight and turned it on.
This time, the light was much more narrow, but it was a lot brighter as well.
"So this is where your drawing books are?" Jaden asked. "You were looking, weren't you?" I asked. Jaden didn't reply.
Where's the cat right now?
I shined the light at the entrance to the storage room. That place, most likely. It's the storage. "We aren't going in there." "Do it. For the cat." Jaden took a deep breath, and we were gonna start walking when I saw it. The two eyes peeked from around the doorframe, and I thought I saw its body for a split second. Yet again, my flashlight died the instant the animal showed itself. I slapped it a few times, trying to jumpstart it, but my attempts meant nothing. "Do you see that?" I asked. "Yeah," Jaden said, excitement filling his voice. He knelt on his knees and started getting its attention with noises. The cat stayed in its spot, its iridescent eyes darting between the two of our faces. Something occurred to me that didn't before. A cat's eyes glow against a light. But for the second time, my flashlight had died in its presence. So what was catching its eyes like this? Before I got to ponder it any longer, Jaden would try to move a little bit closer, and the cat would retreat. I took the net from Jaden's hands. "Actually, stay right here. I'm gonna catch the thing. We don't have a light anymore, and I want you somewhere I'm familiar with," I said. "I wanted to do this together," Jaden said. "Just trust me, please. I'll chase it out, and when you see it, you can lead it towards the stairs." "Okay, fair enough." Jaden was clearly disappointed. As much as I'd loved to have him help me, something felt very off. What it could have been, I didn't know. But if this cat was somehow dangerous, I didn't want Jaden in its way. This time, though, I knew the routes better. I knew where it could be. To my surprise, it wasn't hiding. I watched it dart around me, observing from different angles as I walked. I'd try to interact with it, but it seemed to be too shy. When I kneeled to it and held my palm out, it'd hesitantly take a step forward, but even then it'd back up again and vanish, only to appear behind me. It was curious, but way too cautious. After a while of this, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't gonna be friendly with me. Not in the span of one night, anyway, which is all we had. So I started chasing it. It ran around corners and through the stacks, but I'd always find it again. Somehow, it managed to get even deeper into the storage room with every attempt. I decided to go to the very back of the room and chase it back from there. For a bit, it worked, though I had to be quick on my heels. By the end, I was out of breath. Its glowing eyes peeked out from under a wooden bench, almost taunting me. I knew it was scary, but why did it keep coming to check on me? I didn't know. My calves were starting to burn. I ran at it, and it turned to sprint away. I kept up, holding the net in its position. It was going to take a hard right turn when it instead slipped, scrambling about in its place. When the cat got to its feet, it made quick glances between me and something to its right. I should have caught it right there, but I wanted to know what it was afraid of. It tried to take off again, but Jaden jumped in front of it. He lunged for the cat and it leaped back at me, to which I brought my net to the ground as fast as I could. I felt the net hit something, forcing it to the ground. It writhed on the floor, but it wasn't going anywhere. We finally did it. We caught the cat. The net tore open. I saw its eyes leap at my leg, and it landed on my side before pushing back off. I didn't spin around to catch it. In fact, chills paralyzed me in my spot. When it jumped onto my leg, it wasn't paws that hit me, but pairs of hands. Dozens of fingers wrapped around my calf before pushing back off with a force that sent me to the hard, cold floor. I screamed. I felt nausea stir in the deepest pits of my stomach. As I propped myself up, I turned to see it glaring at us. A rumbling growl rolled from its place. Its two hazy eyes floated from the floor, gaining height until it towered above both of us. Boxes on either side of us shifted while something grabbed hold, digging what I now knew was its nails into the cardboard. Jaden grabbed my arms and pulled me up, and then he dragged me along as we both started to run. My memory phased in and out after that. Next, I knew we were running up the steps towards the kitchen, slamming its fists into the stairs. It followed. The kitchen light went out. We rushed for the living room as it jumped at the kitchen table, throwing the table onto its side. Glass shattered as it fell into a china cabinet, but we kept running. The living room lights went out. We ran up the stairs towards our rooms. It leapt to the couches and then onto the railing of the stairs. I heard the metallic sound of its hands sweeping across the metal. The light at the top of the stairs went out. The only light left was in my room. My foot touched the carpet as my room light went out. I threw Jaden in front of me before I spun around, grabbing the knob and almost forcing it closed. Its hands slammed the door from the other side, and the door instead hit me and threw me into my dresser across the room. I remember barely being able to move, and in an instant, something was in front of me. Two hazy yellow eyes inches from my face, unmoving, except now I could see they were filled with rage. Absolute hatred instead of the shy curiosity they held before. The key lay in my open hand, which lay limp on the floor. Jaden was on the wall opposite from me, next to my bed. His face was buried in his hands. Darkness had never felt so malevolent. Before it was engulfing. Now it consumed me and my every thought. The world didn't exist. Nothing did, except me. The hardwood of the dresser I rested on, the tingling in my arms, and the blood trickling from my nose. I woke up in my bed. Sunlight poured through my windows, my blanket wrapped around me like a burrito, and something was in my hands. It wasn't the key. I tried to pull my head up, but my neck burst into pain. I instead pulled my hand up to my eyes. There was a note. I knew where it was this whole time. Did you know that? While I didn't know it would go as far as it did, take what happened as a lesson. Sometimes, the best lessons are learned the hard way. The lesson here is we have reasons for what we do.
It was signed by my dad.
When I was done reading, the knob of my door turned slowly as someone peeked through my doorway. "Brian," they asked. "Jaden," I said back. A smile grew on his face as he ran to my bed and gave me the tightest hug he could manage. It hurt a lot, but I didn't care. As happy as he was to see me, I could have been even happier to see him. Alongside our joy, however, something lingered. We challenged our parents' rules for the first time, and it was becoming more and more clear that the consequences weren't a dream. And though we never spoke about it at that moment, we both knew we messed with something bigger than both of us, and we could have died for it.